Hi, my name is Jennifer. I do alterations and I'm going to show you how to hem the sleeves of a formal coat on a suit. I've already pinned and done the fitting with the client, and I pinned it, marked it on the new hemline that I'm going to do. There are several different techniques I could use to accomplish this, and I'll also show you how I decide that. Yeah, so let's get into it. Here is our sleeve. There's the mark of the line it needs to go to the new length. First, I'm going to remove these buttons. These are non-working buttons, so they do not have buttonholes. They don't even have fake buttonholes. The work that I'm going to do on this cuff is specific to non-working buttons. So if you have non-working buttons, or even if it has a decorative stitch like the buttonholes, but the buttons don't actually unbutton, then you're going to use certain techniques. If you have working buttonholes, then you're going to do something totally different. And you want to be really careful when you remove these, not to nick the fabric. It's really easy to put a little hole in the fabric when you're removing the buttons, so be really careful. And then I'm just going to do a line straight across with a sharpened chalk. I'm measuring across here to make sure that I'm taking off the same length across and it's totally straight. Then I'll transfer it to the other side. Now the technique I'm going to use is the false cuff. It's called a false cuff because I'm not going to recreate the vent. And it's actually easier when you don't have to recreate the vent. And I do this because when it gets to be shortened this much, when you do recreate that vent, it's just going to be a tiny little mitered corner, a little vent, and it's just not even worth it at that point. I know there's some techniques where you recreate the vent. I have not learned that or perfected that, and so this is the technique that I've been taught by tailors and other professionals, and it looks really good on the outside. It's clean, it works, and so that's what you can use. Here I'm going to start opening up the vent area and then removing the main fabric from the lining. So this is that vent area. Here up close. There's the lining, so I start unattaching the lining from the main fabric. The lining is also tacked. It's usually tacked on the seam line, so it's just tacked with a little stitch from the seam line of the lining to the seam line of the main fabric, and then I'm going to remove that. Push the lining back inside so it's not in the way. Open up the vent a little more, just to the top where the vent makes that angle, so at the very top of it. Then remove these stitches from that mitered corner. remove the stitching from this other corner. The mitered corner always overlaps this other side of the sleeve, so this other corner, and that's what I'm removing right now, the stitches. And then cleaning up the little stitches that are from the buttons that I took out. I do live with a feisty dog, so that's the dog barking his head off in the background. And then this stitching, yeah, you remove this, that's gonna be on the inside seam. I'll zoom out and then you can see where that is. So it's the seam that's opposite of this overlaid corner. Then peel this away. This was some interfacing that sticks to itself. Flatten that out. There's the mitered corner flattened out. You can see those lines. And then go in and I'm just gonna press that line, that old line out just a bit, just because it's easier when I draw the line for the new hem allowance. It's just easier to cut it when that other line is smooth. And then the standard hem allowance for cuffs is 2 inches. So I'm going and drawing on the bottom of that hem, and that is going to be 2 inches. Now I cut off the extra on that mark that I made. On the inside of a cuff, there's always this interfacing. You see that white? Now, what I was showing and what I'm showing is the new hemline that's going to be folded right there. When I turn it back, that interfacing is not going up far enough, so I'm going to have to put on more interfacing. But first, before I do that, I need to mark this line, this press line, this new length with some stitching, some basting stitching, and that's going to create a line that I can follow, because once I press with a hot iron and steam, that chalk line is going to disappear. And so it's very important that you have some kind of marking to follow, otherwise you're not going to know where to hem it exactly, where to press it. So that's why I go in with this just double line of regular thread and go across there. And now this is the interfacing. It's a special type of interfacing that comes on a roll like this that is used for cuffs, and you can get it at Wawa. I only put the interfacing on this fabric, not on the seam line. You see I cut it right before the seam line because the seam line it provides the structure. So the interfacing is there so that there's some extra structure so that it can, when you fold it up, it lays crisp and yeah, nice and crisp and with some extra stiffness. And then I also put a strip where the new buttonholes are going to be, and that's in this area, because when I attach the buttons, I want them to attach to something with a little bit more, you want it more substantial, stiffer, because yeah, if you just attach the buttons to just straight fabric, it's going to pucker and not be so pretty. It's going to create some stress lines. Then the vent, I actually press that out and just press that flat. And that's gonna really help with turning this up to create the false cuff. Now bringing these two sides together, I'm going to fold them. So you see one side, the side that had the vent, is going to be on top, and it's going to be folded over and with the other side, so it's all just folded together. And this is what it looks like after you fold it. Now I take a pin and I'm going to pin those two sides together like that. And I do this so they don't shift. So then I go to the inside, I just turn the sleeve inside out, and then you gotta grab these layers together. And the pin is still on the inside, it's holding everything flat. It's really important that that outside and these layers, as they are folded and pressed, do not shift, because you're gonna turn everything out, as you'll see, and it can shift, and then what you sew is not gonna be accurate anymore. So being really careful on this stuff is important. Remove that. And then I can just carefully flip everything out. I have a really strong grip on that. Put some pins in. So now everything's folded back out and flat. And this area right here is the vent. So you'll see some of that old vent right there. Here's the top of the vent. It's like this slant. And now I'm going to go in and start drawing a line that you stitch on. It's going to go from that top of that angle down, and then horizontally through the, like the horizontal line is going to coincide with the new fold line. And then it goes all the way down. And so the one that goes all the way down to the bottom, I'm following a fold line. If you can see, that's why you really want to give it a good press, because it creates these lines that you can follow and that you need to stitch on. So I'm just outlining it for you so you see where to go. This is the other one. Down, over, and then back down. And now I will stitch that. on the machine. Now before I fold the cuff up, I have to be careful about where this little flap lays. It's got to lay a certain way. You can't turn it the wrong way because it's going to lay weird and awkward. And there it is. This is the other one, and ooh, that's ugly. That's gonna have to get redone. You can see where my stitch lines, they did not intersect like they should have, so they're a little bit off, and that's what's creating this, that awkwardness. So here, I fixed it. You can see now those lines are running into each other and everything's flat. So that's the goal. You want everything nice and flat, no weird puckers. Now here is where I would go in and tack that seam. However, there was so much taken off of this cuff that like the further up you go, there's more of an angle. And so you see they weren't laying right on top of each other, and it makes it a lot harder to tack there. So I'm not going to tack the seam lines together in this case. Now I'm going to take the lining down and cut off the extra lining very carefully. I do about a ½ inch away from the end of the cuff. And then on the sleeve lining, there's always on both sides, there's going to be this access point, so this stitching that is on the outside, and you can open it like a door, like it's like a window, an access point that you can easily get into. And then you can go inside and grab the lining, turn it under, grab the main fabric, and you're going to pinch them together, make sure the correct seams are lining up where they should be, otherwise you're going to get the lining and it's going to be all twisted around to the wrong side. You grab both of them together and then pull everything out through that hole in the lining that you just opened. And now we're going to stitch the main fabric to the lining. On the false cuff, this is pretty easy to do because you can do all your stitching in one go, whereas with the other technique of a cuff, with the vent, you would need to do it in two parts because the sleeve is separated into that vent, but this one, everything is just one circular cuff. So you can just sew one complete line, one circle, all the way around. And once that's done, you just turn it back out of that hole. And then close up that little doorway right there. So press these together, the lining, and then sew that shut. Here I'm shaping the lining down because there's always there's extra lining that is gonna fold, and you take that little extra and that's where you press your new line. So it's like this little extra excess that goes down, and then you just press it flat. Then give everything a final press. Now we reattach the buttons, and I'm just drawing the placement of those buttons. For this one I did an inch up for the first one, and then they're all separated by ½ inch, and there's 4 of them. I'm gonna move that first line over a bit because I realized I made it too close to the seam. So now I'm going ½ inch over from the seam line. There we go. Now I'm just gonna attach the first button, and you're gonna use a double line of thread. It's a heavier thread. I like using, there's a button thread, like an official button thread that you can use, but I actually like using denim thread, so top stitching thread for denim, because it's strong and it's smooth. I like how smooth it is, so it doesn't tangle as easily as the official button thread, because the button thread does not have that slip that this thread does. And then I'm just going to go through once on each side. So just because this thread is so strong, I only have to go through one time. So I'm not going to go through a bunch of times like I would with just regular all-purpose thread. Then I'm going to actually travel between these layers, so you don't see a bunch of thread on the inside. So from button to button, I'm going to travel in between the main fabric and the lining. And you just make sure that the buttons, they are right next to each other, so they just touch each other as they go up. And see, when I go on the inside, I'm just gonna go into the lining and then travel up to the next spot and then go through. So on the inside, you should only have a little dot of thread. I really like going through the lining and the outside, just because when you go through all the layers, it just adds this extra stability, and the buttons are placed onto the fabric more cleanly, and there's no stress lines, and it's just smoother. Now I'm making the knots. I make 2 knots on top of each other, one last stitch right underneath everything, and then cut it off, and it's done. And here it's done, beautiful, crisp, flat, smooth, and you could not tell that it is fake.
And on the right here is the client. He is wearing the suit to prom. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.